Ratios. Ratios is a way for you to compare two quantities with the same units. Okay. Usually we write them in one of three ways. We write them as a fraction, a to b, or we write a is to b, or a to b. Okay, all of those mean a ratio, and the actual underlining operation that we use with it is division. Now, it's very important that you recognize how to set up your ratio so that you're dividing in the proper way. So in order to set it up, the first number is the numerator and the second number is the denominator. Okay? The only time that you would do something a little bit differently is if you actually were told to do it in a different manner. Now, the biggest thing that you have to keep in mind is that you need to make sure that you have the same units, and in some instances you're going to have to do some conversions. If the units are not the same, so right here is kind of really important, if the units are not the same, you want to change the units so that the smaller unit is used for both. So this is just a small table of equivalent measurements that we have. Now this particular table is usually what I like to call the table to memorize. Most times when you are working problems, doing tests or whatnot, these conversions are not given to you. You are expected that you know these conversions by heart. So I would suggest that you use this as your mini roadmap until you get comfortable with it, and never assume that these are going to be given to you, but definitely assume you are going to have to use them. Now, with that, I've got a bunch of different examples of different types of ratios that can be created. So first it says write a ratio as a fraction in lowest terms. So what that means is once you create your ratio, you need to see if you can reduce any. So I have 178 to 572. So essentially the rule here that we are using is we are using A to B, which means we would rewrite it as A over B. Remember, the first number comes first is the numerator, the second number is the denominator. So this would end up being 178 is to 572. Now with that, we need to reduce. So one thing that I like to do is I like to look at their pairs. 178 is even, so I know that I can break it down by 2, and the same with 572. It is also even. So when I take 178 and divide it by 2, I'm left with 89. 572 becomes 286. So this means that my fraction here can actually be rewritten as 89 over 286. Now, being that I've done this for a long time, I can recognize that there is nothing in common between 89 and 286. However, if you're ever not sure, then you can just simply look at what multiples of 89 there may be, or is it prime. Here's your biggest hint. If the number is prime, you are 100% simplified. Meaning you would definitely never have to simplify further. You're already down and done, and that's it. Okay. So yes, that being said, this would be your answer. So let's look at another one. Here I have 5.6 to 10. So this would become 5.6 to 10. Now the rules that we like to have is don't work with fractions. So instead we would take this and we would move it out 1. Well, because we did that, it means we have to take the one that we didn't see and we have to move it out 1 as well. Thus rechanging my fraction to be 56 over 100. Again, we know 56 is even, and so is 100, so very simply we can start by pulling a 2 out of both. When you pull it out of 56, you are left with 28 behind. When you pull it out of 100, you're left with 50. So this is going to make my new fraction 28 over 50. Again, both of these are even, so we know that again we can pull a 2 out. When you pull a 2 out of 28, you get 14. A 2 out of 50 becomes 25. So this is going to leave us with 14 over 25. There is nothing else in common between those two, therefore that is our most simplified form. Alright, now we've looked at a whole number and a decimal, so what happens if I have fractions? Well, if we look, my top would become 10 over 9, and then I have to put in my ratio bar, and my bottom is 5 over 12. Well, the rule that we have to follow says keep the top, change the sign to multiply, flip the reciprocal of the bottom. So this becomes keep the top, 10 over 9, change to multiplication, flip the reciprocal of the bottom, 12 over 5. Now if we look at it, you should be able to see our good old friendly combinations where we have diagonals that match. So here 10 and 5 can reduce. This becomes a 1 and this becomes a 2, thus making our fraction 2 over 9 times 12 over 1. Again, we have this 9 and this 12 here, which have something in common. They can both take out a 3, leaves a 3 behind on the bottom and a 4 on top. So in this case, you would multiply straight across the top. So 2 times 4 gives you 8. Straight across the bottom, 3 times 1 gives you 3. Since there's nothing in common between 8 and 3, you're done. Now in this case, I have donuts to donuts. So this is going to be 3 1/2 donuts to 12 donuts. Now the first thing that has to happen is that this 3 1/2 needs to become go mixed to improper. So when we're talking about mixed to improper, remember to go back to an improper says we have to do bottom times the big number plus the top, keep the bottom the way it is, and this whole thing is over 12. Now the other thing to notice is that I have donuts over donuts, so my units are going to cancel. So here I need to reduce it down. So 2 times 3 is 6 plus 1 is 7. So this is going to give me 7/2 over 12. Again, we're going to keep the top, change to multiply, find the reciprocal of the bottom. So this is going to become 7 over 2 times 1 over 12. There's nothing in common between 7 and 2 or 7 and 12. So here, this is simply going to become 7 over 24. Alright, last, what happens if my units are not the same? So we need to write each ratio, however we have to change to common units. And then use it to write as a fraction in lowest terms. So the biggest thing you need to remember here is you usually want to use the smaller unit. So I have hours and I have minutes. So in this case, the smaller unit is minutes. So that means I need to convert my hours to minutes. So to do that says I know that 60 minutes equals 1 hour. So this is where anybody who has a science background, a lot of it comes out. So we're going to start with the fact that we have 4 hours. And I need to convert that to minutes, so this becomes 60 minutes per hour. And when doing that, I'm going to end up having 4 times 60 divided by 1, and this is going to leave me with minutes. So 4 times 60 is going to give me 240. So this is going to be 240 minutes. Well, don't get excited. That was just simply the conversion. I actually have to do the ratio. So my ratio says that I'm looking at 4 hours to 30 minutes. Well, we already converted, so this is going to be the same as doing 240 minutes to 30 minutes. I have 240 over 30. Well, that is going to reduce down to 8. And technically we're talking about minutes. So that is how you would run your conversion. So let's go ahead and look at another one. So here we have nickels to quarters. So again, your smaller is your nickels. And so what do we know? We know that a nickel is 0.05 cents. And we also know that I need to have 5 nickels to give me 1 quarter. Now the reason I know that is because I know that a quarter is 25 cents. So your elementary math skills should kick in. So we know that if you have count up by 5 cents, you end up with 5. So this is the conversion factor that we have. So I have 5 quarters, and I need to convert to nickels per quarter, which this is going to give me 5 times 5 over 1 nickels, which is the same as 25 nickels. So again, I need to do my ratio, which says I have 5 nickels to 5 quarters. Well, we already converted quarters, So this is the same as saying 5 to 25 nickels. And here we would go ahead and reduce. 5 goes into 25 5 times, so this is going to be the same as 1 over 5, and then technically we were talking about nickels, but we're looking at 1 over 5. Alright, again, looking at your smaller, we have inches. So here we need to be able to convert. Well, one thing that we know is we know that 12 inches is the same as 1 foot. So I need to convert 2 feet into inches. So I've got my 2 feet is going to be the same as 12 inches per foot. So this is going to be 2 times 12 over 1 inches. So this equals 24 inches. So that being said, we need to do our ratio. Your ratio says that you have 36 inches to 2 feet. But we converted our 2 feet, so this is going to be the same as 36 to 24 inches. So here 36 over 24 can reduce. First of all, we know that both of these are even. But we also know that we can pull a 6 out of both. And so here, to start with, we can pull a 6 out. So this leaves me with 6 over 4. And this again can reduce even further by dividing out another 2. So overall, we end up getting 3 over 2 as our ratio. And of course here we were talking about inches. So it's always a good idea to kind of keep track or keep a good idea on what the unit is that you are working with when working with your ratios. And there you have it. That's everything that you need to know to get started with ratios. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.